Successful franchise salespeople might be the biggest threat to your brand. In this episode, we're going to talk about the problem that doesn't look like a problem, how to tell when your franchise salespeople are actually sabotaging your brand, and then the fix. What you need to do to correct the problem and grow in a way that is not only sustainable, but can be multiplied for years to come. So the problem that doesn't look like a problem, you're growing. Your franchise salespeople are consistently bringing in leads and converting them into franchisees. Everything seems to be going really well on the front end. On the back end, once you have franchisees, they have a wide range of performance. You have a few that are at the top and are really producing, even maybe thinking of expanding into multiple units. And then, of course, you have the bottom who seem to just be sitting there, maybe getting angry, maybe getting bitter because they're blaming you for their inability to work the model and grow. And of course, you have the middle. That's usually about 60% of your franchisees, and they span a wide spectrum from just breaking even to making some good money. But a lot of them, in fact, the majority of them are content without growing into that top 20%. In the beginning, you need to get franchisees open and operating so that you can get royalty sufficient so that you can support those franchisees the way that you intend. And you're doing your very best to not approve candidates that really aren't the best fit for your brand because you've heard that that is a brand killer. And the number one thing franchisors need to avoid is onboarding the wrong candidates to become franchisees. And you feel like you've done a really good job of that. And now you're seeing that there are some gaps in your training and support and maybe some innovations that need to happen in the brand. And so you are looking at making those upgrades, and those are going to cost money. And so you're redoing your FTD right now, and you are updating how much it's going to cost, the range for the technology and the different features that you're bringing to the franchisees as they come in order to help correct some of the gaps that might be contributing to that inconsistent performance in your first wave of franchisees. And here's the tell. You tell your franchise salespeople that the investment to become a franchisee in your brand is going up. And they panic. They push back and they say, no, we can't raise the price. We need to keep it as low as possible. Or we need to keep it within this range because that's where we're finding all these candidates and that's how much money, and they don't have any more money to spend. And so we've got to keep it in this range. We can't afford to raise it because we're going to lose candidates. We're going to lose the attractiveness that we have as a brand. Huge red flag. Let's walk through all of the reasons that this is a red flag. Number one, your franchise salespeople should be mature enough to not be selling your brand on price. Selling on price in any business is the wrong move because when you sell on price, you're simply a commodity. You're simply the cheapest option on the shelf. Is it brand name toilet paper, generic toilet paper? I don't care. I want the cheapest. I'm not looking for quality. I'm not looking for efficiency. I'm not looking for cleanliness. I'm just looking for cheapest. Those are not the franchisees that you want. You want the franchisees who are discerning, the ones who are looking for quality, the ones who are understanding the investment that they're making is tied to the potential success that they will have. Selling on price is a very immature way to sell, and it shows an immature mindset in regards to sales. A great salesperson would say, amazing. I can actually increase the quality of leads that we're getting. I can even sell some people that maybe weren't convinced before about our quality because now I can highlight all these additional things that we're doing. And yes, it's going to cost them more on the front end, but we want the franchisees who appreciate the value that we're bringing to them and are willing to pay for it. Because here's the truth. People don't buy things. They don't buy a brand. They don't buy a business. They buy the result. People always buy the result. I have sold a lot of things in my life. I've sold skincare before I ever officially owned a business. That was a little side gig. But when I became a franchisee, I sold gym memberships. And then ultimately, now as an executive coach, I sell business education and coaching. And I can tell you one thing for certain, that if people are unwilling to pay for the result, they are unwilling to work for the result. Now, there are some people who are willing to pay for a result and still unwilling to work for a result. And then there are the people who will pay for a result and they will work because they paid for that result. So let's break it down and talk about these three types of people. The people who are unwilling to pay for a result, if they're not going to pony up the cash to get into the franchise, they're not going to put in the work. I mean, we're talking about a 10-year agreement to really grind through, especially through the first months to years, in order to make that business a success. Parting with money is much easier than parting with blood, sweat, tears, relationships that are strained because you're at work instead of being home for dinner. All of the collateral things that have to happen in order to make that business run. So we know right away if people aren't willing to pay for it, then they aren't willing to work it. Now, I'm going to connect this back to what the franchise salespeople, our fictitious franchise salespeople, had to say about you raising prices. They're worried that if the prices go up or the price of getting into your brand goes up, that people won't pay it. Okay. Well, if they won't pay for the result of the lifestyle that owning a business builds for them, then they aren't going to work the business to build that lifestyle. And we'll get in a moment to different ways people could pay for it. Now let's take the people who are willing to pay for it but not work for it. Now, this typically happens when something is within someone's price range. So it's not painful for them to pay for the result, but it is painful. It's more painful to work for the result. And this happened all the time in fitness, where people would say, oh yeah, like the membership, I have no budget. That was one of the questions we asked during the sales consultation. What's your budget for a membership? Oh, I don't have a budget. I mean, whatever it costs, it costs. Okay, great. So it wasn't painful for them at all to part with that money. And they didn't show up to work out either because the money wasn't skin in the game for them. It was disposable, completely disposable income. And so a lot of times people who are comfortable paying a certain amount, also, they aren't willing to work because the work is more pain than parting with the money. Now let's talk about the people who have to stretch to pay for the membership, who do monthly installments because they can't pay it all at once, who watch it come out of their bank account every month. And they know, if I'm not in the gym, that I'm just wasting that money. They'll be in the gym. But more importantly than the guilt or the skin in the game of having the money, they desire the result that badly. People who are really looking to lose weight and know that they need help in doing it, and that is their goal, and they're so committed to that goal that they say, I understand this is going to cost me more money than I want to spend, but I can't afford to not pay it. I can't afford to not do this because I have to get the result. Those are the people that will stretch to pay for it, and they will have their rears in the gym every day working their tail off because they are focused on the result. And that is what they want. Obviously, out of these three, you want the third customer to be your franchisee. You want the person who says, it's not comfortable to pay this money. It's not comfortable to part with my 401k or to roll it over into a business. That's a scary proposition. But I know that I want the life that I can only achieve with business ownership. And I've done my research and I know that your brand is the brand that can take me there. And even though it's a little more than I would want to invest at this point in my life, I will, because I'm not going to invest in something that might take me to the result. I want something that will take me to the result. And I am willing to invest in it and work for it. Now let's talk about some of the areas in life where this happens all the time and it's common practice. People go shopping for a home. They have a budget. The real estate agent takes them into a home that is a little over their budget. And what happens? They fall in love with it. And many times people will stretch that budget and say, okay, we weren't really wanting to have a monthly payment that was $100 to $200 more per month. But this home meets all of our specifications. We love it. We're going to be here for 10 years. We believe that this is going to be a home that's worth it. And so we pay it. Right? Same thing happens with wedding dresses. You go in with a budget. The shop person shows you something a little bit more expensive. And you find yourself stretching to pay for it because it's the biggest day of your life. And you want to look a certain way. You have an image in your mind. And when you put on that dress that fulfills that image, that will give you that result of walking down the aisle and feeling like a bride for that one day in your life, you pay it. And then we get to a business, which is another huge life event. Notice these are life events. Buying a house, getting married, buying a business is a life event. And yet we have salespeople trying to sell something on price. That would be like the wedding shop owner saying, okay, you have this budget. Well, let me show you this dress. It's under budget. This one's under budget. So you should love it. That doesn't mean it's the dress, right? Selling on price is not about selling the quality and selling the result. It's simply about you can afford this. That's not how you want franchisees making a decision about your brand. Okay, so what is the fix? The fix here is making sure one of two things happens. If you're having this conversation with your salespeople and they're encouraging you not to increase the ranges in your FDD or add certain things to your FDD, because they don't want that initial investment to go up, then number one, you can attempt to train them. You can attempt to have a conversation with them and say, look, we're not selling on price here. We're selling on quality. And these items actually raise our quality. And it's your job to focus on quality and to show the value that they receive for these items. And you can compare our brand to other brands out there, and you can confidently tell them that we've made these investments because these investments, we believe, are tied to the result they're looking for. And if they look at other brands, they're going to find that other brands aren't making these types of investments. So they can go with another brand, but they need to expect that the results of going with that other brand are going to be tied to the lack of investment that they're making and the lack of features that they're receiving that would help them get to the result that they ultimately want. Or they could make an investment in our brand that has all of these features in it so that they can get the result that they want. So you need to coach them through this. Now, this happened quite a bit when we owned the gyms because we were working with young employees. We had high schoolers and we had college students that made up the majority of our staff. And often this was their very first sales job. And so when we would raise prices, sometimes we'd get pushback. And the pushback would be, I don't think that what we do is worth that. I don't think people will pay that much for a gym membership, and I don't think it's right that we're charging that much for a gym membership. And I would have to have a conversation with them and say, "Tell me, why do you believe that this is too much to pay for a membership?" Well, it's too expensive. Too expensive is relative to that person's relationship with money. I mean, Beyonce doesn't think a gym membership for $150 a month is too expensive, right? So we had to have that conversation about your perspective on expensive is coming from a place of the money management that you know and understand based on your experience. So for you as a student who has a part-time job and you have to pay for rent, food, gas, books, and have some extra money left over, yes, $150 per month could be a stretch for you for a gym membership, especially when you have a $10 gym down the street, right? Because you're shopping on price based upon your income. But the people that come to our gym, they are established professionals who've had careers for 10 years or more. And their household income is 4 times what yours is. So for them, $150 is like the $10 gym membership. That's one thing you need to understand, is that your perspective is skewed. Now, with a franchise salesperson, the perspective may not be skewed in the same way. Their perspective is skewed because they make a commission on every single person who says yes and signs that franchise agreement. And their perspective is coming from a place where if you raise the price, the initial investment to get into this brand, then I'm afraid more people are going to say no. I'm going to sell less people, and my commission overall is going to shrink. It's going to limit my opportunity to sell. And so therefore it's going to limit my income. And that's where that fear is coming from. No matter what, when we're talking about mental blocks in regards to sales, it comes from a place of fear. Either fear of rejection, fear of being pushy or being perceived as someone who is unethical or not good, or sometimes even evil. Like people have a lot of mental blocks when it comes to sales based on their experiences, both as a customer in the past and observing other salespeople in the past. But most of the time, this is going to be tied to, I'm afraid that it's going to lower my commission. It's going to make it harder for me to sell. And therefore, I'm not going to sell as many franchise units in a year and my commission will suffer. So you have to have a conversation with them and say, this is not, we don't want the people who would buy at the lower rate. We want quality candidates who understand value and want the result. And they want every tool in the toolbox that is going to help them get the result, and they are willing to pay for it. That's who we want on our team, because those people will be willing to work for it as well. So that's one thing. You have to have a conversation about the perspective. But the other piece is really helping them understand the value. So going back to the gym scenario, when I had an employee who was upset that we had raised prices, we had a price point that had two scenarios. So we had the monthly membership price, and then there was a startup price where they received boxing gloves, hand wraps, a nutrition plan, an app, a heart rate monitor. So they received all of that in the first month when they signed up. And so we had a startup fee to cover the cost of all of those things. So what we had to do is sit down and say, okay, let's take a look at what the gym member is receiving for the money that they're getting. And let's just go through it. Let's look at the value. So the heart rate monitor, for them to buy it separately, would be, and I think at the time it was $129. So it'd be $129 for a heart rate monitor. It would be $30 for them to buy the gloves. So now we're at $159. It would be $10 for them to buy the wraps. So that's $169. And then it would be an additional $60 to have meal plan and app access for the year. So that put them at $220 if they were to buy those things separately. Now, our startup fee was $199. That's what we were raising it to. So essentially, I was able to show that employee that they were actually saving about $20 from what it would cost them to buy it separately. And then we also had to talk about the value of having the heart rate monitor, because in the past, we were letting people buy it separately. And that's really why we had to raise the price of the startup fees. So when we lumped it together and we made sure every person had a heart rate monitor. So the conversation became about, yes, could we continue to sell it separately? But then what happens? Well, people don't buy it because they don't understand why they would need it. But what have we observed from our clients who have the heart rate monitor? And as we had that conversation, my employee realized, he said, well, the people who have the heart rate monitor, they get a much better workout. And he was studying to be a nurse. And he said, and we're able to see what their heart is doing, which allows us to tailor the workout to them, allows us to keep them safe. It allows us to push them so they get more fat burning, or to slow them down so that they don't overexert themselves and get out of fat burning and start burning muscle. So as we talked through this and he really understood the value, there's a huge value to having the heart rate monitor that the customer wouldn't inherently understand before experiencing the workout and experiencing the workout with a heart rate monitor. And so it's easy to understand why they're skeptical and they wouldn't buy it. But us, as the experts in the gym, we know how valuable that heart rate monitor is. And we know that with every customer having a heart rate monitor from the beginning, we can get them to the result faster. That's actually what they want. And so we're not going to give them a choice anymore. We're going to include it, and that's going to help them achieve what they really want, which is the weight loss. So we're not doing them a disservice by including it and by charging them more. We're actually helping them get over a mindset block so that they can get to the result faster, what they really want. And as we had this conversation about the value that we were providing and how we were helping people get out of their own way because they were looking at things without all the experience and the knowledge that we had, then he began to understand the value and the purpose. We're getting them to the result. This is what's required to get them to the result. This is how much those requirements cost, and it is what it is. And it became his job to then sell the result and get them signed up, even though they would be paying more for the startup costs. And once he understood that, he was on board. So that's one thing that you can do with your franchise salespeople is say, look, we're not selling the startup cost. We're not selling the franchise based upon it only costs you $75,000 to open a business. That's not what we're selling. We're selling the life. We're selling the result. We're selling the when you own this business, you will have an asset that grows in value year over year until you decide to sell it. We're helping you build a life that includes more flexibility and time freedom. We're helping you create jobs and give back to your community that fulfills you in your purpose, which is why you're talking to us. We're helping you have no ceiling on your income like your former salary did. We're helping you create the wealth that you want to live with. That's the result. And in order to get that result, you need certain things to help you run the business. Those things cost this much of an investment. And so when you have to walk your salespeople through that. So that's one way to fix this problem. The second way is if the first fails. If the salespeople can't get over their mindset blocks, that's an indication that you have outgrown those salespeople. It is a fact of business that as your business grows and as you move through the stages of entrepreneurship, as you grow as a franchisor, your business is going to start to need different strategies, different skills, and different perspectives at the next level. And this will happen over and over again. And it's quite common that the people who helped you get to where you are now have reached their ceiling of growth. And so they are incapable of helping you get to the next level. And it's time to thank them for their service and part ways and find the people who are at the mindset, at the skill level, and understand the strategies that you need to employ at that next phase to come into the operation and to help you grow from this point forward. And this is just a unfortunate growing pain that we all experience, because very often we really like the people that have helped us get to where we are now. We want to bring them along with us, but we have to look at this as business people and understand when people are not capable of doing that, then they've served their purpose. They've been in our lives for a season, right? People come into your life for a season or a reason. I think there's a third one, but but they have served that purpose, and now it's time to shift into the next phase of growth. So this is a situation that all brands will encounter, and the brands that are most successful will recognize when features need to be added, when the initial cost needs to go up, and when the franchise sales conversation needs to be addressed quickly and take quick action in regards to that. And they will be the most successful. The brands that drag their feet on this because they don't want the price to go up, or their salespeople are telling them it won't work, and they're not making the executive decision and taking the lead on it, then they will likely follow that advice, and it's going to create pains, because what is going to happen is you're going to continue to bring in franchisees who are at a level lower than where you really are taking the brand. And so you're getting a little bottom heavy in that spectrum of franchisee performance. This is something I work on with brands all the time. We go in and take a look at the features that they're providing to the franchisees, and I help them understand from the franchisee perspective, what is the ultimate result that the franchisee is looking for? What are some additional value adds that could be put into the franchise offer that would help franchisees reach that result? And then how do you explain that to franchisees in the sales process? And then, of course, ultimately, you'll have to back out of that and decide, well, how does that affect the initial investment, which will need to go into the FDD. This is one of our tools that we use to ensure that a franchisee is never left behind, which of course is our mission at Secret Sauce. So if you'd like to have that strategy call, just comment below and we will get you a link to sign up for it. Thanks for tuning in to the Ask April Porter podcast. If you found value in today's episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your fellow franchisees and small business owners. To access the resources I mentioned during this episode, check out our show notes.